Thank you for joining us today for our next episode of Mixed Messages with Jeff Bogue. My name is Joe Caruso, and I'll be your host as we dig into today's topic. Instant replay.
When you made that, there's a new documentary about Jim Henson.
No.
Oh, yeah. You sounded like a Muppet there for a minute.
Yeah. What I was envisioning in my mind was actually, I'm pretty sure it's Ace Ventura, where he like tells the story of something happens and he's dressed in a tutu, if I remember the scene correctly, and he's like throwing a pass and pretending like he's commentating on a football play, and then he's like, instant replay, and like pretends like he backs up. It's so well done. But on that note,
I don't watch inappropriate movies, Joe.
I don't either anymore. That was from 1994, Jeff.
Oh, man.
Yeah. I actually remember it was 1994 because if you're a Jim Carrey fan at all, The Mask, Ace Ventura, and Dumb and Dumber all came out in 1994.
Wow.
So that's a big, big year for him. But all that nonsense aside.
There's something I didn't need to know today. Go
yeah,
ahead.
You're right. There's the thing. You learn something new every day, but no one ever said it was always helpful. Well, from news sources to comedians, from friends to advertisements, it seems everyone has an idea of how we should think, live, and make decisions. But when everyone disagrees, how do we cut through the noise? How do we sift through all the information overload and choose what governs our lives? Well, as we pray and process these things, we want to offer a resource to navigate some of the day's most pressing topics and questions. Jeff?
Yes, Joe.
I was actually just thinking.
Oh, good for you.
In this concept, it's few and far between, but here I am this afternoon using the noodle. What movies, if you can even think of any, did you like love as a kid, and you're like, now I'm like, I would never watch that again. It's terrible. Like I just don't like it, or it's terrible, or the rest.
Well, I hesitate to answer the question a little bit because what I am shocked by is the movies I loved in college that I then showed to my kids, and then I realized they were wildly inappropriate.
Oh, yeah.
So I'll tell you one, and then everyone else can be self-disciplined. But I probably watched the movie Raising Arizona 30 times. It was hilarious.
I've never seen that.
It's hilarious. And then my kids were like little, and I was like, you guys got to watch this movie because it's so funny. So I put it on. I'm like, oh, like the Naked Gun movies are like that. They're like, these are so funny. And then you're like, your children, you're like, these are turn that off. Turn that filth on that I just turned on for you, So, yeah, those kind of things. I just thought things were funny.
Sure.
And you forget, honestly, about the inappropriate parts. You forget about the language. You're actually, you're not remembering the movie. You're remembering this one bit in it. And that's what you keep repeating. So
for me, it was a stumble across the quote unquote real movies.
Okay.
Because so many of the movies we watched frequently as kids were videotaped off of like TBS.
Okay.
And so they didn't have that scene, or they didn't have the language because it was all dubbed over or edited out. And so even movies like Shawshank Redemption, I watched probably a dozen times off of TBS.
Yeah.
And then the first time I remember, and that one's not even like filthy or anything, but I'm like, there's a lot more cuss words in here that I remember.
Yeah.
It was just like,
yeah.
And just because it was always, stuff, but dubbed over top of the movie and everything.
When I was a youth pastor, back when I first started ministry, we would do this New Year's Eve all-nighter. And what we would do is we would rent out at the Barberton Auditorium, then we would, for like a few hours, and then we would rent out like Sluggers and Putters, the whole thing, because we'd have like 300 kids with us. And then we would rent out a movie theater. And it was then that I realized, like, trying to find a movie without bad words in it was unbelievably difficult. And so I finally found like one of the Star Wars ones, and it didn't really have any bad words in it. And I'm like, this is appropriate, to show at a church event. But I wasn't sensitive to it until you're responsible for the audience. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like I quit hearing this stuff or became numb to it. So there's a lot of them, but we're movie buffs at my house. So like the Marvel movies are clean, they don't have the sex junk in them and all that kind of stuff. And so they're out there, but for me, it was the stuff I thought was so funny in college. And then like I showed it to my children, and Heidi's like, "You are going to be arrested." So
Yeah. Well, sometimes that has to do with the generation gap, which actually is a good segue into today's question. So our listener, I love, truly, one of my favorite things, I would probably be a psychologist or a sociologist if I was in a different field. I just love how people think and all the rest. But this person starts, this is for the Mixed Messages podcast, which I don't mean to tease our listener, but yes, when you typed in the form /mixed messages, this is for the Mixed
yeah,
Messages
this is
podcast.
where it comes.
But
Thank
anyway,
you.
the question is good. I have a question on the age gap in dating /marriage, and a 10-year age gap. Is it necessarily a bad thing for Christ followers? If a man and a woman are both walking with Jesus, then would it be okay to date and get married even if both of you are 10 years apart? Or how come followers of Jesus seem to be fine with a woman who is 10 years older than a man dating or marrying him, but it tends to be weird if it's flipped around? I'd truly like to understand this and why this is, besides just giving an answer, well, back in the Roman times, men were monsters and dangerous to women, which I also love that little coloring in between the lines as well. But there is oftentimes this stigma that, like, if a slightly older woman finds a younger man, there can be this culture like, oh, good for you. But if like an older man goes after a younger woman, it's like, you're a predator.
Yeah.
Like, why would you do that? And so I think that's the context that this listener is asking the question. There seems to be cultural baggage around this at times, and yet it can be semi-pervasive. But is it a real thing we should be looking out for? How do we kind of navigate this?
I don't think the Bible would speak to the age gap. I think the Bible would speak to the spiritual maturity, probably emotional maturity of an individual. And in our culture, we would think of that more as stage of life.
Okay, sure.
So I do think it's inappropriate for a 24-year-old anybody to try to date a 14-year-old anybody.
Absolutely.
It's not even legal. So that's a stage of life.
And it's not legal because it's inappropriate.
That's right. I think that's different than a 34-year-old dating a 24-year-old, and I think that's different than a 44-year-old dating a 34-year-old. So it's because the stage of life levels out.
Sure.
Right? And where it probably gets weird again is when a 84-year-old is dating a 34-year-old.
Sure.
And then you're like, somebody's probably a gold digger. So I think that's more the issue. And I think what the Bible would speak to in that is like, what is the purpose of relationships and what is the purpose of marriage? So if I am I'm just making stuff up now. Yep. So I'm 53. Is it, if something happened to Heidi and I was dating again, which I would probably not do anyways, but let's just say, would it be appropriate for a 53-year-old to date a 23-year-old? Would that be immoral? I would be like, no, it's not immoral. Is it appropriate or inappropriate? I'm like, I don't know. It could be usual or not or unusual. Mm-hmm. So I'd say it was unusual. And then I would ask this question, is it selfless? So if I'm 53 and the wife-to-be is 23, what happens when she wants to have children? Are you now going to be 73 with a senior in high school?
Right.
Are you going to be able to raise your children? If you say we're not going to have children, did you just crush her dreams or her needs because you've resigned yourself to the fact that you don't need that, but now she has to agree with you? And so it becomes to me an issue of selflessness. Mm-hmm. And then motive, like, why am I looking for like a trophy wife, or is there a genuine love and a relationship here? So I don't think age is within proper boundaries, mm-hmm. which we talked about already. I don't think that's the issue. I think it's purpose. The purpose of me dating should be to marry, right? So I'm going to date because I'm looking for a spouse. And then I'm going to look and say, I'm looking for a spouse. The purpose of marriage is for me to give my life away to someone, not for someone to give their life to me.
Yes, so important.
So important. And what I see more is that someone who is selfish versus someone who's a rescuer, someone who's narcissistic who marries an enabler. And to me, that's more the conversation. And honestly, that can happen at any age and any stage of life.
Yeah, I would know the answer to this probably right away, but have you seen in those cases people looking for other people to fulfill needs that God's supposed to meet?
100%. And that this is what happens if I am marrying someone so they can fulfill me, make me secure, heal me, help me, change me. Those are all things that my relationship with God is supposed to do. So what happens whenever I put someone in the place of what God is supposed to do, I've made that person an idol in my life. I've looked at them and said, you have to act like God or else.
Yeah.
So I've just committed idolatry. And by the way, you are going to be disillusioned and you are going to be full of pain because they cannot do what only God can do. And I see that when people are 22. I see that when people are 52. And I have friends who there's been a death and there's a remarriage to a younger woman who's substantially younger. Well, it's all about selflessness. If she has dreams of a family, are you and your adult children prepared to have another family? And is there a giving? And when that giving is back and forth, it's really healthy and beautiful. But if any part of that in any marital relationship is self-centered or selfish, it's a poison that will kill that tree every single time.
Yeah. So the concept here, because in some ways the listener is asking the question, is an age gap a disqualification of marriage? And I think you've addressed that. So let's put that then on its head. Let's reverse it a little bit. So if age isn't necessarily a qualification of marriage, what are some of the things that are good things to look for if you're looking like, I wonder if this person would be good someone to date and therefore marry?
These are not my words, but I use them a lot. Women should look for men with a name.
And what do you mean by that?
If you are dating someone that is disrespected by their peers, if you're dating someone that has a reputation of being a hothead, if you're dating someone that has a massive ego, if you're dating someone that you think you're going to change, if you're dating someone who's always on the verge of breaking up with you, you should run for the hills. And women should look for men who are men of character. By the way, ladies, I am very aware of how hard these men are to find, unfortunately. Most young men and even middle-aged men are children who are trying to find a mother, not a wife.
Yeah.
And so if he will not hold a job, if he does not have a direction in life, if he is disrespectful to his mother, he'll be 10 times more disrespectful to you. If he's entitled, if he's cynical, if he's lazy, run. You're not going to change him.
No.
And until he grows up on his own and makes his own decisions about who he's going to be before the Lord and who he's going to be in life, there's nothing that you can do to move him on. Now, I did not say he's perfect.
Sure.
I did not say he's maturing, it's when you see that stop and you're like, this guy is going nowhere. That guy is going to be 50 years old driving his high school Camaro and complaining to you every day about how his new boss is a bigger jerk than his last boss. And you're going to be the breadwinner. You're going to be the stabilizer. You're going to be the one who keeps the marriage together. You're going to be the one who stabilizes. And I know that I'm speaking very strongly to this because I believe this very strongly.
Yeah.
There are many men who were not raised by good fathers or a father at all who want to be good, godly men. And they're teachable and they're humble and they're changing and they're on their way. And their starting point was, so to say, lower than somebody else's starting point, but they're committed to it. Those are good men.
Yep.
They're often godly men. They're not perfect men. There are men like myself and others. I had an excellent father. The head start that gives me in life is unbelievable. I never worried about a meal. I never worried about an education. I never wondered if there was another man on the planet that loved me and was proud of me. So I got a head start, and I'm grateful to it. We were not rich. My father was sick most of my life, but he was a good, godly man. And my mother, who was, especially after Dad got sick, she had to bring stability. She had to bring financial stability. She didn't have to do that because her husband wouldn't do it. She had to do that because she was an amazing, godly woman, and she had children. And so they figured out a different way to be a team. It was powerful. But I would say to you, ladies, that the way that I've heard that said that I like is you're looking for a man with a name.
Yeah.
What is that guy you're dating? What is his reputation?
Yeah.
When he is on his second or third marriage, I wouldn't just listen to his side of the story. When he can't keep a job, or his parents are idiots, or what's wrong with the world, and if he's overly competitive in church league basketball, if he can't control his tongue, those kind of things. So men with a name. Now men, I would look at you and I'd say, you want to find a woman with a heart. So men are much more criticized in relationships because in general they'll take it.
Interesting.
Women are less criticized because they don't tend to take the criticism as well. And I know I'm generalizing and I know I'm stereotyping, and forgive all of that, but I'm right. So if you're looking for a woman and she's obsessed with her Instagram, every picture is her with puffy fish lips and her makeup tips. If she is catty, if she is cliquish, if she is materialistic, if she doesn't have a direction in life, the best partner is someone who actually doesn't need you to be their partner. So Heidi will be just fine in life without me. Right? Mandy's that way too.
Oh, absolutely.
And
But
so
maybe better.
there's an independence there, right? If she's not self-sacrificial,
Yep.
if she's competitive with you, if she's critical, if she's cynical, if she's always about talking about a cause and not about sacrificing for it. See, it's just a different side of the same coin. You should run. I would say to you, men, if she is needy, like if you're away from her and she is breaking emotionally because she hasn't talked to you for a day, be careful with that. Now, I'll say the same thing. Most women do not have good examples. Heidi and I were talking about this last night, actually, because we were talking about someone that God is really working in their life. I'm really proud of this person. And we were talking, I said, honey, if X, Y, and Z happened to you, this is what you would do. And I said, and when X, Y, Z happened to my mom, that's what my mom did.
Interesting.
It was their makeup and who they were. Now, I look at this lady, X, Y, and Z has happened, and she's striving. And I'm like, you're amazing. You have a strength. You're learning. You're rebuilding. She hasn't arrived. She hasn't arrived. Nobody's arrived. But I'm like, there's something different in there. And I would look at you men and say, if you see a woman that is secure in her intelligence, she's secure in her femininity, she's secure as a person, or she's striving to be. She has a work ethic. She's a cheerleader, not a competitor. She wants your shadows to blend. She doesn't want you to slip into hers. And by the way, vice versa.
Yep.
Now you're talking about a quality person that you would look and say, I want to unite my life with that. Not a perfect person, not a fully mature person. That's not what I'm saying. But there's a grit and a determination in both of these stereotypes I'm giving that we're self-aware and we want to overcome our weaknesses, and we're self-aware of what we're good at and not good at, and what we're good at gives us self-confidence but not arrogance, gives us courage but not ego. It's that kind of stuff that you're looking for. And what's the way that this author said this when he was writing that stuff down. He said the best way to find a godly mate, a husband and a wife, is to run as hard and fast after Jesus as possible. And when you're at a full sprint, look around and see who's keeping up. And that's the category of person that you want to date. So be involved in ministry. Be involved giving your life away. One of the ways that Heidi and I bonded was we did inner city ministry on the weekends together. We were residential in college, so we'd go to Chicago. I'm like, she is incredible. Tony Lavigny, Pastor Tony, tells a story of when he first noticed his wife. She was talking with a homeless person. The person was missing a belt and couldn't keep his pants up. So his wife took hers off and gave it to him. And Tony was like, I was very attracted to that. But they're doing ministry together, and you're seeing this heart play out. And like that's somebody that you look at then and say, well, maybe I should investigate that one.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter the age gap. Is just back to our original question. It matters the character and the focus of life a little bit.
I was just going to say, you're doing a great job of describing what could simply be said as you're looking for the character or integrity.
Yeah.
Because it takes a miracle to change someone's character.
Yeah.
But competency, skills, how do I healthily navigate marriage? How do I build a household together? How do I become a parent? Like, those are things you can learn, but if they're built off a strong character, you're way ahead of the game, kind of like you mentioned.
And I tell you, that part of why I'm so strong about this is my story. Heidi met me for the first time before I was a follower of Christ. And I thought she was cute and was flirting with her and wanted to ask her out. She wouldn't have anything to do with me, not in a cruel way, just like, yeah, this isn't happening. Well, I had no character. We were separated. We weren't dating. Like, I went to Philadelphia and she stayed at school, and I came to Christ. all of my motivation for good character kicked in. Like I was a transformed person. It's a long story. Then we kind of re-met. And what caused her to be interested in is she's like, this is a different guy. Okay. Now, I was a new believer who was very versed in the Bible. I grew up in church, grew up in Christian school. Heidi, I think, recognized the trajectory I was on, but I hadn't achieved it, so to say.
Yeah.
That's different because she was not trying to rescue me.
Mm-hmm.
She was willing to go on a bit of a journey with me.
Right.
And Heidi is a strong enough person with strong enough character that if I had stopped that journey, or she sensed that I had before we got married, she would have broke it off. So I'm not trying to look at everybody and say, get your act together, you're unworthy. I'm trying to say, like, what you give your life to makes a big, big difference. And when you're looking for a wife or a husband, you're dating, like, you need to look at what they're giving their life to, what they care about, or maybe what they're learning to care about. And you get wise counsel and all that kind of stuff. You can usually sense it, and you start there. You start there with the process.
As you mentioned that journeying thing, I wish more couples would look at each other for their trajectory as opposed to their compatibility.
Yeah.
Because it does seem like so many couples, whether it's interests even, or styles of life that they want to have, and if I'm being straight to the point, even people trying to explore, are they sexually compatible? It's like you're putting the cart before the horse in all of those categories. Yep. None of those things make a good marriage.
Right.
None of them. It's the trajectory, because you learn all the rest together. You'll navigate that together, and if you're committed in loving that person, you're actually kind of excited to figure out some of those things together, or share some of the things you're not that interested in, and grow in your eventual sexual compatibility and all the rest. Like, those are the things that you have to monitor, like you said, the trajectory, the character, and all that first. Run after Jesus. He'll start allowing the rest to fall into place.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I don't think a couple should get married for at least 2 years. Because I don't think you have explored enough. Now, as soon as I say that, I'm going to get emails about, we only dated for 45 minutes and it's 40 years. I know that there's exceptions to the rules. Yeah. I'm saying, as a rule of thumb, you haven't gone through enough of life's nuances together to really understand something. Mm-hmm. And character is usually revealed in the nuances. Mm-hmm. It's not revealed in character crisis times. It's never like, you want to rob the bank with me, yes or no? That's not usually the way it's going to work. It's going to work more of, what do I... am I willing to try to forgive this person, or would I rather just gossip about them? Yeah. It's not I made up a story about how I used to be Iron Man. It's going to be more, what white lie did I tell, or what truth did I omit?
Sure.
That's how character usually comes out. And you need some runway to really understand that. Your sexual purity during that 2 years is your biggest example of character.
Yeah, I was even literally just thinking, you have to have enough runway of experiencing life beyond just I'm attracted to you.
Yeah.
Because again, that's not the foundation of a healthy marriage. That, well, the only reason I like her is because she's so cute.
Yeah.
Or, he's so, we have to get past that. Your relationship depth, if it's just surface level, your relationship is only going to remain surface level. So when you experience family death, when you experience the hardship of trying to buy a home, you fill in all of life's gaps. You have no foundation to build it on.
Yeah.
And so if you don't allow yourself the runway to experience some of that, and as you're talking about, live in the sacrifice of purity for one another, then you don't even know who you're dealing with yet.
Yeah. Yeah, we're going to do a series on this fall.
Yeah.
And we don't have a title worked up for it yet, but I think it's a really, really important conversation. This is the other thing I would say to all of us who are married. Good dating principles are actually good marriage principles. Good dating practices are good marriage practices. And so sometimes I think when I've been married for coming up on 31 years, sometimes I hear something like this. I'm like, that's neat that those kids need to hear that stuff. And I'm like, actually, I'm pretty far away sometimes from the practices of romancing and preferring. And so sometimes I think the longer you've been married, the more you need to hear the dating talk because it helps you with it. But guys, the number one testimony that most believers have, the number one illustration that most believers have about who Christ is and what they're like is their marriage.
Yeah.
The best thing you can give your children is a good marriage. I like to say, people will often ask me, what's the most important decision you made in ministry? And I will always say, I married well. Because in ministry, in my case, your wife is your biggest asset or your biggest liability, and there is no in between. Mm-hmm. I would not be in ministry today if it wasn't for Heidi. And sometimes that involves her saying, quit being a baby and go back to work. Right?
Yeah.
So, and then sometimes it's, I just need to cry on your shoulder or something, bad has happened. So it's a big, big deal. And most people today, statistically, don't have good examples.
Right.
So that we can't do this instinctually anymore. But I can tell you, when you marry a fellow Christ follower, when you attend church regularly, when you read your Bible on a regular basis and you pray together every day, your chances of divorce go down to 4%. Mm-hmm. Because you've made Christ the focal point of your relationship. So if someone isn't willing, and that willingness hasn't been proved out, so to say, that's the character piece, then you're going to unequally yoke, is part of how the Bible talks about it. You're going to unite your life to someone who is not where you are, and it's going to be rough. Mm-hmm. It's going to be rough. I like to say I'd rather deal with it. I'd rather walk you through a disappointment than a divorce. And choosing is a really important part of that. Now, I've seen wonderful couples that are 15 years apart choose on these principles, and they're doing great.
Yep.
And we just tease him about being old.
Sure.
I know a wonderful couple that's 12 years apart, maybe 14 years, actually. 12 or 14, I can't forget. I can't remember, but they just got married, and we tease her about, robbing the cradle. But they're a wonderful couple. Mm-hmm. They're absolutely wonderful couple because they're Christ-centered, and they actually met doing ministry together.
Well, in the reverse, in the context of this entire episode, you've met plenty of couples that are 3 months, 6 months, 1 year apart.
Oh, yeah.
But not built on all these qualifications that are disasters.
It's a disaster.
Because age in and of itself is not the only factor. Yeah. It's really helpful, Jeff. Well, I hope if this certainly answers and helps our listener, and if this is the kind of thing that's been helpful for you and you'd like us to dialogue about something specific, you can always reach out to us and submit those questions at bath.gracechurches.org/mixed messages. If we can help you take any unique next steps, maybe it's relationship advice or some counseling, we would love to help you with that. Reach out and let us know. If you like what you're hearing and you want to hear more of it, make sure you subscribe, follow, rate, and review our podcast. And if you're looking for a place to run after Jesus together, you can always check us out here in person at Grace, or even begin to discover what we're like online. Thank you so much for jumping in with us today as we continue to see God's voice through all of these mixed messages around us. We'll see you next time.